what's going on, guys? This is the Gamer Shenanigans podcast, episode 1, or maybe episode 1.5, I don't know. But I've got Simon here.
Hey.
And Noah.
What's up?
I don't know if you'll be able to hear them or not, but I mean, we'll see. Last time they were pretty clear. I double-checked to make sure my audio was recording, so we won't have that problem this time. But, the topic of discussion I picked last time is the same topic I'm going to use this time.
Okay.
How do you, the topic is nostalgia and childhood memories involving the media, whether it be, movies, video games, or music. So let me start out by asking a question. What is the first video game you remember playing or receiving?
Oh gosh. It's gonna depend on how you define video game, I guess.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, as in, I had this word processing thing back on DOS.
Oh, DOS was golden, man.
Yeah, I know, and that was kind of the first time that I messed around on it.
Right.
I can't really say anything I did on it was actually
right. I wouldn't really count the first time I messed with a computer either. But I mean, I kind of would, because the first game I remember playing on a computer was it wasn't a game, but it kind of was. But it was Windows 3.1. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was in my grandmother's old house. They just moved, probably about maybe 2-3 months ago. So it was in their old house. We pretty much grew up in that house. And the game I'm playing is called Binary Land, by the way. It's really strange. But yeah, so I'm playing Binary Land at the moment. But anyway, back to the story. The first game I remember playing was it was a Crayola Art Studio, I believe, Crayola Art Studio 2. I can't remember which one. And it was just like a coloring book. It was basically like a digital coloring book.
Yeah. When I think back about what game, I played tons of different games over the days,
right.
I guess, but when I think nostalgia, first game that I really remember getting super excited about and all that, we had on our original NES that we got Super Mario Brothers.
Oh yeah, that was my first one too.
And I remember arguing with my mom because she wanted me to go to bed, and I was like, "No, I'm on the last level. I have to continue playing this."
That was always the excuse, man. It worked every time.
Well, but no, because she was like, no, the game goes on infinitely. There's an infinite amount of levels. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure that's not the case. And she was like, yeah, no, that's the way games work anymore. That's why they're awesome. Which, of course, was not true. But I think she did believe that.
Right.
I don't think she lied.
I don't really think infinite games existed unless you were talking about puzzle games.
Ski Free, maybe? That was even after.
I think the first game I remember playing and the first game I had were different. Dang, that's a while ago. I would say the first game I remember playing was on the PlayStation 1. I can't remember which one it was, though. I think it was, I'm going to say the original Spyro the Dragon, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like... Oh, I failed. I didn't pass the level. Sorry, I'm playing a game too, so it's kind of two things going on at once here. But it was my idea. I don't know why I decided to play a game and talk, but anyway, Spyro the Dragon I remember the most because my cousin was the first person that I knew that had a PlayStation at that time. And for some reason, I remember the PlayStation before I remember the 64. I don't know if it was because the PlayStation came out first or not. But I remember my cousin had a PlayStation, and it ended up breaking because one of the pieces inside broke and the disc tray wouldn't close. So yeah, that was really difficult to fix back then. But anyway, I think what was for you? Noah, I forgot to ask you, man. But you didn't say anything, dude.
The first game I've ever played is probably Pickle Wars.
Ah, that stupid game.
that is not a stupid game.
Well, I mean, what the like? I watched that video for like 30 seconds and I was just like, I'm out. Like, I was just like out. Like I lost it. I lost interest in 30 seconds.
Simon, have you ever played Pickle Wars?
Played which one? You kind of broke up and I didn't hear you.
Pickle Wars?
Pickle Wars.
Pickle Wars? No.
Yeah. Neither have I. I didn't know.
I cannot claim to be a Pickle War aficionado.
It's an old game.
I'm sure there's an award for that.
Yeah.
Right? Was there a pro circuit for the Pickle War?
If there was, then they were just idiots. 'Cause that game wasn't even appealing. I mean, I gotta give it to you because not all it was really rare to find a DOS game that was appealing.
Hey, Castles. The first Castles was really good. That was a DOS game.
That's why I said rare. I didn't say it was impossible.
True.
I think when I think of DOS games, I think of Crystal Castles for some reason, which was not a DOS game. Oh no, it was because you said Castles and you got me thinking of it. I remember when I was a kid, we had this Atari collection, or the Atari Anniversary Collection, I believe is what it was, and it was a lot of the classic games, and Crystal Castles was like my go-to. Anyway,
was Commander Keen on DOS?
What?
I said, was Commander Keen DOS?
I don't know what that is, so probably.
Okay. Yeah, somebody will tell me if it wasn't.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys tagging along with me on this. We've been trying to do this for like ever.
Yeah. All right, Simon. I asked this in the first one, but you weren't there. What is the obsession with XCOM?
For me personally, or for people in general?
He literally, because he was like, I didn't know what the heck XCOM even was, and he goes, oh, Simon's always the one that talks about how awesome XCOM is.
Well, actually, it's kind of interesting because, like, on the forum, there's on one level a misconception about it, because it goes way years and years ago when it started, because people were asking questions. They'd be like, and it was when we're at on Reformed Gamers is up to like over
1,500,
over 1.5K at this point. But this was back when there was not nearly that many people.
Right.
And so you saw a lot, like, you were able to comment on more things because there weren't as many posts going up a day.
Right.
But there was like 5 in a row where people were like, oh, well, what's a game I can play that has X in it? Or what's a game that has Y in it?
Right.
And I kept putting up XCOM because XCOM basically has elements of everything in it.
Right.
And then it just kind of snowballed from that into XCOM is always the answer for everything because it does everything.
Right.
I played.
So I'm switching gears here. I changed games. I'm sorry. I felt like since this is a gaming video at its core, I had to make an announcement to the world that I'm switching games. But carry on with your business.
Well, I was just. But as far as the game itself, of course, there was the old UFO Defense.
Right.
And that game was fun. I played that back in the day. And then, of course, it took them forever to get out any more IPs in it. And they've all been solid. I enjoyed them all.
Yeah, Fortress is great.
So,
speaking of XCOM, there is are you familiar with Legend of the Seven Stars?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There is I don't know if this is a direct sequel. I don't know if they've made a direct sequel yet, but they've got Actually, that did make a direct sequel. Believe it or not, it was Paper Mario. Paper Mario was supposed to be a Super Mario RPG 2, which is why I have such an affinity for the series in the first place. So like that's because Super Mario RPG is one of my favorite, gotta be my favorite game of all time. Like no question. I don't know if it's the nostalgia or the gameplay itself, but
Right.
that's got to be my favorite game of all time. And so they've made, they've actually had two different series, the Mario and Luigi series and the Paper Mario series, that have spawned from it. And I heard they were making a Mario and Luigi RPG, but they were partnering with Ubisoft and using the Rabbids. So it's going to be, the working title, I believe, is Super Mario RPG Invasion of the Rabbids. And the only thing I've heard about it lately, it was supposed to have launched for the Switch, but it didn't. The only thing I've heard about it lately is that it was going to be like XCOM. That's why I even asked what XCOM was, because I don't even know what kind of game it is.
Well, I mean, that would be interesting.
Right.
Somebody says to me that they're going to make a game that's air quote like XCOM.
Right.
Kind of the first thing that pops to my mind is, well, then they're going to have base building and resource management elements to it.
Right.
Which would be interesting given the Mario RPG.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know exactly how that would play into it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. But I mean, as long as they're making a sequel, like I just care about the IP, honestly. Because that's got to be my favorite series to ever exist across any system. So as long as they're continuing it and not letting it die, that's what matters to me. But I mean, that's kind of where you set yourself up for a lot of disappointment too. Sometimes is buying a game just because it's in a certain series. Because sometimes, there's a game that's part of a series that's a complete far cry from the source material.
Well, that would be the Bureau declassified in XCOM. So
yep.
There you go.
Okay, so next question. What was the most? I don't know how to describe this one because I have two. It's a question, but it's more like two questions. What was your favorite movie growing up, and why?
The definition of growing up.
Yeah, because you're just a freaking baby. No way, you're only like 12. I would say, what was the movie that most impacted your childhood? That's a better question. Not necessarily impact in a way of taught you a lesson or anything like that, but what movie do you remember most from childhood?
I'm really gonna date myself here, probably.
Yeah, probably.
But
hold on, what? Simon, did we lose you?
Oh, we're still talking, Chase.
I can't hear him. Hold on. Simon!
Simon, he can't hear you, Simon. I can hear both of y'all, but neither of y'all can hear each other.
Tell him to
Simon,
tell him to.
Simon.
I know he can hear me, but I can't hear him. Tell him to disconnect from the call and come back in.
Simon, disconnect and come back in. Chase can't hear you. There you go. He did it.
Okay, he's coming back in. But yeah, sorry, YouTube. This is the dumbest idea for a video series ever, but I mean, what the hell, Excuse my language. No, it's just a baby who can't handle it.
Oh, he's connected.
Hey, Simon.
Wait, he's not in yet.
Simon.
am I here? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Anyway, you said you were about to date yourself, but what?
Oh yeah. Well, sorry about that. I don't know what happened on it, but
Yeah.
I remember my grandparents taking me to see the first Land Before Time movie in theaters.
Oh, man, wasn't that like 1975 or something?
Yeah, something
Jeez.
like that. Little bit later than that. Isn't
That's
it?
been like 15 movies ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they stopped numbering them at some point and just started putting words that
Have
became
they
subtitles.
have they made one in the last decade?
I think they have made them since the year 2000, but I don't know if they've made it like within since 2010.
I'm gonna look at that up right now
Yeah.
for posterity. By the
That's
way,
information the world doesn't need.
I switched it up again. The game I'm playing right now is Air Fortress. Do you remember, Simon? Do you remember Air Fortress?
I do remember Air Fortress.
The soundtrack, man, the soundtrack is just
It was.
phenomenal for that game.
It was.
But anyway,
It was.
a lot. I just now started. I used to do emulation a long time ago, but I just now started getting back into it. And the advantage of having every game to ever release on 2 or 3 consoles is like being able to listen to every soundtrack. I think
Sorry. Hold on.
it's almost your bedtime, isn't it, Noah?
No.
Hey, it is. It's 8:43. What's your bedtime? 9 o'clock.
It doesn't really matter.
You told me you had, baby. But no, I was trying to do one the other day because I had 2 or 3 friends on a call at once, and he goes, "No, I have to go to bed." Bug. There's a bug in my house. Oh, son of a bitch. Ew, that's gross. Ew, that's gross. Where the hell did that bug come from? Excuse my monetary lapse of judgment on the language there. That
It's
freak,
hard to an-
that
it's hard to
freaking
answer
dude
this
just
question.
like scurried across the floor.
It's hard to answer the question because I'm still growing up. But if I had to pick one, it would be Phineas and Ferb.
The movie?
No, the TV series.
Well, yeah, 'cause you're a baby.
It has the creativity in that.
Yeah, that I agree with that. I agree with that. A lot of TV not necessarily back when I was growing up, but probably more when Simon was growing up. TV was a lot more hard hitting than it is now. Because a lot of it is political correctness nowadays, and you can't talk about sex or drugs without to what?
I would both agree and disagree with that. Like when I look back on it, because like I'm okay. So like everybody else in the world,
Right.
Who grew up in the 80s and the 90s.
Right.
I mean, I'm a child of Dragon Ball.
Right. Oh yeah.
Dragon Ball.
Have you been keeping
And, I
up
mean,
with?
Clearly, there's a lot of violence on that
Right.
level in there.
Right.
But I was kind of like, then later I went back and I was watching more recently The Legend of Korra.
Yeah.
And there's character depth in that,
Right.
which there wasn't in the
Sorry.
first part of
Sorry.
Dragon Ball.
I'm eating a candy bar, so that's why there's loud noise on my side.
But I mean, like they went out of their way. That's why the initial Ocean dub stopped was because Krillin very clearly dies, and they didn't have a way to get around showing it, and so they just
Right.
were like, well, we're not showing that. So
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I agree with your statement, but then I'm also like, but I don't know. It seems like you can get away with certain much more mature things now.
Right. But that's why they had different blocks back then, because like.
Right.
You know, Adult Swim had first come into existence when I was about 7 or 8. You know, so back then they didn't really have a specific spot to put those, you know, really, whether it be shows with a lot of language or a lot of sexual content or anything, so they didn't have a place to put those. So they had to put, like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
But anyway, what I was getting at was more on the terms of Stuff like Full House and Boy Meets World. I have so much respect for Boy Meets World because they tackled so many issues. Whether or not they were relevant to the time period was, it's more relevant to teenagers in general, whether or not it be teenagers in the 80s or 90s. Like, for example, there was one episode where Sean, you've seen Boy Meets World, haven't you, Simon?
Mm-hmm.
And there was one episode where Sean, he starts drinking and she starts drinking and it gets really bad, and like that was really deep for what was supposed to have been a family TV show at that time, and I have a lot of respect for them because they tackled a lot more hard-hitting issues than Full House per se, because you wouldn't really see a serious episode of Full House. I mean, they had serious episodes, but it wasn't like, premarital sex or drugs or anything like that. But they also did a good job of being comedic with it too, because there was the one episode where Corey and Topanga went to prom, and Alan and Amy were worried that they were gonna have sex, and like they did a good job of emphasizing that, but they also did a good job of keeping it. Like, they emphasized it, but they didn't drill it in your head. Mm-hmm. And that's a good balance, especially for teenagers now. Like, you have to, like, you can emphasize something without drilling it in their head. And one of my favorite episodes of Boy Meets World was the one where Sean accidentally ends up in a cult. That took some serious balls on their end, because that's something that is probably uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about. But anyway, I would say growing up, the TV show that impacted me most was I don't know, that's a good question. I would say probably a Disney Channel show, because I was really into, because Disney used to have a lot of better quality shows around my time than they do now. But the next question is, what is your favorite memory associated with video gaming?
First time I played Link to the Past.
Oh yeah, I think
really, the Zelda franchise was always, probably because of when I got into gaming and how my family had interacted with gaming. The Legend of Zelda franchise was one that was very important to me.
Right.
It was very important to me, and that was really like the age I was when I first played that game, and what was going on in my life and everything. That game kind of was the first one that put in my mind that the way, like, how good a video game could be.
Right.
Like, that's the game that taught me you should expect, like, you should demand that the stories you're told are good stories, and that they're told well, and that the gameplay are good, and like that meets this threshold.
Right.
That was kind of the first one that really put that in my mind, where it's like I deserve to demand this from level of entertainment.
Right.
Whenever I go into something.
Okay, so mine is probably just not necessarily related to a specific game, but gaming in general for my family, as I was growing up, was more of an experience than, just casually doing something. Mm-hmm. Because, my dad and I, we don't really hang out much. I mean, that's as to be expected because I'm 22 years old now and I'm getting older and things like that. But my dad was really involved in our gaming. I still have not even played Air Fortress yet. What am I doing over here? But anyway. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut off the gaming and we're just going to record us talking. So, sorry, YouTube. But I think for me, it was mostly just bonding with my father and my younger brother. Mm-hmm. because we, like I said, we don't really do much of that anymore. I mean, granted, because we all have our own lives, and so the level of intimacy, I guess you would say, I experienced with that sounds weird. Or the level of closeness I experienced with my father and my brother when we were gaming is, I'll never forget. So it's more.
Well, let me ask you a question, kind of in conjunction with that, if you don't mind. Because this kind of goes into what my answer as well, and touches back on something you said earlier when you were just mentioning having watched some gameplay footage of a game online.
Right.
I don't know how frequently you watch. Like, I'll watch people play games all the time online, and I know some people look at that and they're like, "Oh, that seems weird. Like, why would you watch somebody else play a game?"
Right.
For me, though, like I said, I grew up with my brothers and my dad, just like you said. You had your dad and your younger brother, and we played games together. Where half of it, you're just sitting there watching somebody else play.
Exactly.
The whole experience is so communal.
Right.
And it's like I've just never lost that. I still possess that whenever I'm, so I'll go online and I'll watch somebody else play a game, and it's like that's just how I've always done it.
That's a really good way of looking at it. I never thought about it that way. That's deep, man.
Working up the waterworks over here.
Right. But no, Simon, would you be interested in doing this semi-weekly? Not weekly, but like maybe monthly at least?
Yeah, I mean, anytime I'm free, I'm always willing to jump on here and talk with you guys. I mean, obviously, as we were even just talking before we started recording today, I'm very busy most of the time.
Right.
So I don't always have a free evening, but anytime I do, I'm very willing to jump on.
This is something I really just want to do because like conversation is a good way to get to know someone. I mean, obviously, but it's nice to reminisce with other people about your own lives and the lessons you learned and things like that. We're at about 27, so let's go on to 45 minutes. So I'll give you 2 or 3 more questions.
Alrighty.
Here's a question that is just specifically for my benefit. What was your favorite part about the story that you read that I gave you? Whether it be a joke or a play on words or something like that.
I'm guessing this is just for Simon.
Yeah, because you haven't read. You're too young to understand what I'm writing. Not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah, it's a deep, profound aspect.
Little Bo Deep, more like. I know.
Like I said, I thought the strongest element that you had going for you in the story was that it was pretty clear. Your theme was very consistent.
Right.
And I am a sucker for retelling of.
Exactly. That's where it's going to hit a lot of people too. By the way, YouTube viewers. I'm gonna give the YouTube viewers a quick synopsis, real quick. I am writing a story about a classic nursery rhyme characters. It's gonna be a series of books, actually. So it's as if each story is being retold from the character's perspective. So that's what we're talking about right now. But anyway, what?
Yeah, well, I was just, when we had been talking about it earlier a little bit, and you had mentioned a different story that's basically retelling of older things, and I'm a sucker for that series as well. Basically, I just that's something that always fascinates me.
Right.
And as you and I had chatted about before, I particularly fairy tales and nursery rhymes, which were basically morality tales.
Right.
It's interesting to see those updated and kind of brought into a modern perspective because I think it shows a lot about the author too.
Right.
When they're writing, and it's like, what point? How do you pick the point of one of these stories, the moral?
Right.
For lack of
I don't
phrase,
really
of
think.
one
I
of
don't really
these stories.
think. I don't really think of it as something that has a moral, but I mean, I've been considering that.
Right, but that's the thing though. Even if even if it's not an overt moral, where it's like, okay, clearly you read the story of Little Red Riding Hood, there's a point to it. There's a very clear moral that it's don't
get eaten by freaking wolves.
Yeah, that I mean, it's something you gotta learn before you fire up Skyrim.
Right.
It's just one of those things you gotta know. And so it's like, even if it's not that overt, just the bare fact that you're taking that and pushing it to a modern setting, is going to have to shift those things, and they'll still be somewhat, at least in an undertone.
Right.
Even if they're not that overt, where you get to the end and the last line of the story is, and so the moral of the story is.
Right. I think, speaking on this now, I think I didn't even really think about giving it a moral, but I'm really thinking about it now, so thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for that. But I think what I'm going with now is, because it's obvious how proud Hank is of her, no matter how much she screws up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the moral of the story is, or will be, just because you mess up doesn't mean you're a failure. Because I mean, look, that's the purpose of the dream that I put in there was, I'm so terrified of failing. How if my mom was still alive, what would she think of me? I mean, she asked me to do one thing and I didn't do it. But it's just like that's kind of, I feel like I would want to reiterate that a lot. But also that would be really annoying to the readers, because by that time it would probably be inherently obvious how important the flock is, or whatever.
Right.
But anyway, what the heck was my question? Oh no!
You asked what I liked about the story.
Oh yeah. What was your what was your favorite joke, or pun, or wordplay, or whatever?
Oh my gosh, man! See, now you're putting me on the spot.
Right.
I have to go find something.
You have it open?
Yeah, I do have it open.
Let me see it. Okay, so there's one that I put in there. Let me see if you. It was a play on the word. It was a play on the word grim, just to specifically reference the fact that Little Red Riding Hood was or can be retold as a grim fairy tale.
Yeah.
But I feel like, unless I explain that joke, people don't get it.
Yeah, but you can run into the problem of over-explaining.
Right, exactly.
Movies.
Right.
Add layers. Like, I think of, this is obviously not comedic at all.
Right.
But if you've seen Saving Private Ryan.
Have not.
And there's the scene where the two guys, like, as they're taking the Normandy beach, these two German guys are trying to surrender, and they're walking up, and they're, of course, not speaking English, and two people shoot them. Two of the American soldiers shoot them and run on, and it's supposed to be like this sombering kind of, there were atrocities committed on both, or not atrocities, but I guess atrocities committed on both sides.
I can't think of a word better than that either.
But at the same time, it's like, if you, and I picked this up when I saw it just because of my background and everything. I was like, they're not speaking German, those two guys who are coming out. And they weren't. And when I looked it up later, when the fabulous internet was invented, and somebody could look these things up, but those two guys were saying in Czech that they're not German. They were forced to be there. And so it's like, but Spielberg didn't put that in, he didn't put that information in the movie. It was kind of like that scene.
Right. This is only for a certain audience.
Right.
Like that's the way, I mean, like, most of my jokes are up in your face funny.
Right.
But there's one or two that I come up with, that I'm just gonna be, it's fun. It's funnier when there's no explanation, because you're the only one that's laughing at it.
Right.
And I mean, because the next joke involves the word crook being used as a derogatory adjective. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because shepherds use crooks And so I surveyed that with a lot of people. Like I do that with a lot of my almost everything that I write. I survey with people.
Right.
And people were just like, "Oh, I don't know what that means. I don't know if you're making a joke. I don't see a joke." That's what makes it so much more funny. But anyway, what is this one specifically for Simon, because you don't know, it doesn't count in this scenario. What do you think is your favorite kids movie? No, you don't count because you still are a kid. So
my favorite kids movie?
Yeah.
Now when you say kid, like where are you capping it?
Well,
like,
I mean,
something like one of the Marvel movies that
right.
are PG-13.
So it's yeah. I mean, where I was going with this, I was gonna go to a lot of the sexual innuendos in movies. So, what was your which children's movie appeals to you? Like, what movie appeals to you that is simultaneously for kids and adults? It's a difficult question, right?
That is a difficult question. I mean, everything for me is so genre specific.
Right.
I have a hard time making the big ones, but I mean, like I really, really like Searching for Bobby Fischer, and that is definitely for kids.
Searching for who? You cut out.
Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Searching for Bob who?
Bobby Fischer.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
And it's about a kid who is really good at chess.
Right.
And that's only tangentially what it's actually about. It's
right.
about his relationship with his father,
right.
and his sister, and the homeless guy that he plays with in the park. And so it's like it's definitely for kids on one level.
Right.
But I think you get a lot more out of it as an adult.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with this, because I look at Toy Story most of all when I think of a movie that's even funnier when I'm an adult. Not necessarily because there was sexual innuendo, because I can literally only think of one sexual innuendo in the whole movie, and the whole movie was like an hour and a half. But it's just like my sense of humor has evolved into what it is now, and the first half an hour is like just chock full of wordplay and puns and things like that. And it's just like my favorite quote is which leads me into the next question is a little Bo Peep, and what are you talking? And then she leaves and she says, "If you need me, I'm just a couple of blocks away." And it just pans over to a bunch of those wooden building blocks.
Yeah. And
it's like when I was a kid, I would never have understood why that was funny. But like as an adult, like it's not even, like I said, it's not even sexual innuendo of any kind. But there's so much more that I catch on to as an adult.
Right.
This brings me to my next question. What would you say is the most quotable movie from your childhood? I'm not gonna say to ever exist, because they might be different to you.
Yeah. Well, because that's also most quotable for me are just like objectively.
Right.
Because I watched back in the day, blockbusters were still a thing.
Yeah, way back when.
Way back when. And of course, they would purge their old inventories.
Right.
And I found Wrath of the Dragon God, which was a Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Wow.
And it was hilariously bad.
Right.
But it just had the most over-the-top, corny, cheesy dialogue.
Right.
And me and my two friends would, like, a day did not go by where we did not quote that movie.
Right.
At some point. And again, like I say, I can't really say it's the most quotable movie ever, because we're probably the only 3 people in America to watch the movie.
Right. I don't even know what the hell you're talking about, honestly. Hey, Noah, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
You've been dead over there, dude. What the heck? Join in on our discussion.
You're asking all the questions to Simon.
Oh, good point. But no, I think, speaking of movies that are hilariously bad, Are you a fan of the horror genre?
Very much so.
Have you ever seen? It's not the movie you're thinking of, but have you ever seen the movie Black Sheep?
Like, it sounds familiar. Who put it out?
I have no clue. The only thing I know is that Weta Workshop did the creature effects.
Okay.
As speaking from the perspective of someone who is absolutely mortified, not mortified, but I would say not even terrified at this point anymore. Speaking of someone who is absolutely petrified by sheep, it's still one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
Hey, true story. I had a recurring nightmare about walking into the living room and like all my family sitting there, and there was a sheep in the middle of the room, and it would just say hello.
Oh my god! Oh man! Reminded me to show you this short story that I found. It was basically you know what a creepypasta is, right?
Yeah.
It was a creepypasta, but it was Mary Had a Little Lamb. And no joking whatsoever. The part that terrified me was the sheep was bleeding almost as if it was literally speaking, and that just freaked me the hell out on such a deep level. But no, it's I don't know how to I know how to explain it. So there was this so I was closer to my cousins. Not necessarily emotionally, but I mean physically. I lived closer. I maybe 20, 30 minutes down the street from them. So we would always hang out all the time. And I remember probably 5 or 6 years old, my cousin with autism. Well, I mean, most of them have autism, but so that's not really a distinction. But my cousin Bubba, we called him. His name was Brian, but we called him Bubba. So he spent the night with us one time, which was really rare because he's not really an emotional, like he doesn't really do that. He's pretty secluded most of the time, unless it comes to my uncle, because him and my uncle are really close friends. And so it was this really weird toy that I had. It was almost like the 1990 equivalent of of one of those leapfrog learning desks.
Yeah.
But it was just really put together and just really crappy. And when you pressed a button, it would play "Mary Had a Little Lamb," and it was freaky because like at the time, the sound quality in those types of toys was just terrible. So it sounded almost always as if the battery was dead. Like, that's just how terrible the quality of the sound was.
Yeah.
And at the end, it would just make a random, like a sheep bleeding noise. Like, it was the most terrible, most artificial, most fake sound in the world. But it would freak me out every time. It got to the point where I would do it on purpose just to freak myself out. But I had it turned off one night because it would freak me out every time, because it was, I guess, the only explanation I have other than demonic possession, which I still believe to this day. Was that it might have been motion sensitive in some way. Yeah. But basically it went off in the middle of the night. And it kept making the bleeding noise, and like from then on, it was just terrifying. Like, I don't know why. Like, sheep are just. I mean, it's. I've grown out of it.
Well, I mean, I will say this: every now and then, I'll come by somebody who says, "Oh, sheep are soft and fluffy, blah blah."
No, they're not. They're gonna kill you. No, they're not. They're gonna destroy.
You've clearly never been around animals,
right?
Like, it's always hilarious for me when I was out in school in Virginia for a while, and I had roommates who had never been around.
Right.
Based on the comments they would get, "Oh, I get a sheep, or I want to do this or that." I'm like, no, you don't.
No, you don't. Exactly. No, you freaking don't. True story. True story. About what year is this? 2017.
Yep.
About a year and a half ago, I live with my aunt in Texas because my family and I were having problems, and she has goats. She neglected to tell me that until we got in the driveway. Oh, by the way, I have 2 or 3 goats that just sit there and do nothing. And so, Simon, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I didn't hear you. And so, like, a goat came right up to the car. Like, right beside the car. Like, you can hear it. She can hear it messing with the mirror and everything. Dude, to this day, I have never been more terrified in my life. Oh, man, it was just the worst thing. But anyway, back to what I was saying. The premise of Black Sheep is hilarious, and that's what makes it funny to me, even as someone with a completely morbid fear of sheep. But the premise is this: there's this guy. I think the guy's name is shit. I don't even know what the guy's name is. I'll have to go back and watch it. But he had a pet sheep, basically like a Mary Had a Little Lamb type deal. He took him everywhere. It was like his best friend. And so his jackass of a brother decided that he would slaughter it and use its skin, like put the sheepskin on his head and scare the crap out of his brother. Mm-hmm. And so like that legitimately traumatized him. In conjunction with the fact that right after that, their father dies in an accident, he develops a crippling fear of sheep. Which kind of freaked me out a little bit, because going like the first 20 minutes of the movie, it was literally me. Like this guy is my spirit animal on another level. And so it's kind of funny because he lives in New Zealand, and
Which has 3 times as many sheep.
Literally, there's more sheep than people. And so, yeah, this is why I say this. This is why I said this would be an interesting hour. Because I mean, like, I've opened up to you in the shortest amount of time, but no, it was so basically like his brother, I think, the same brother that traumatized him, is doing genetic experiments on sheep, and it was really weird. That's the biggest hole in the plot. Is like no matter how far in the story you get, is they never tell you why he was doing experiments on sheep. And that's the one thing that annoyed the crap out of me. And so basically what happens is the environmentalists, snowflake, I guess you'd call him under President Trump nowadays. Environmentalist snowflakes think they're saving the animals. They take one of the genetically altered sheep fetus type things. It's a really cool effect. It's really cool once you look at it. But it gets loose. They take it, and when they pick it up, it breaks the glass, and it gets loose, and bites one of the sheep, and so the whole thing turns into a domino effect, until the whole continent, the whole country of New Zealand is just swarming with zombie sheep. And it's so funny because it's so stupid. Like, I mean, even for me, I take a lot of humor. Not initially, I didn't. Initially, it terrified me to even think about, because that was right after I read that short story that kind of screwed my entire life up to this day, even. So, in conjunction with having read what I read, I was definitely avoiding trying to watch this. But as I got older, and as I kind of talked myself out of it, I decided I would watch it, and it was one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Here's another question. Are you tired of my questions yet?
No, throw them out.
I'm just going to answer your last question.
Okay.
The most quotable movie is Emperor's New Groove.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think Toy Story is it for me because like Toy Story is the only movie that I paid attention close enough to. Like they say, when you watch a movie enough times, it just comes to you. And like I would watch Toy Story a lot, which brings me to my next question. Okay, and I have another question that's unrelated, but is this, based on what we've talked about, or based on the interaction in general, is this something that the two of you would want to be doing regularly? I mean, not necessarily regularly because Simon has a schedule.
As often as I can, I'll do this.
Simon?
Yeah, same here.
Okay, but anyway, what is the movie that got you through the most difficult time in your life, or helps you through emotional times?
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
I think probably, oh man, it's gonna sound cheesy, but Field of Dreams was one that
never saw it.
Well, just because of, it's kind of one of those things, like you were saying with certain video games, because that's what my dad and my brothers and I would watch, and so it just, I don't know, it holds a special place in my heart for that reason. I'm not going to pretend like it's a great movie.
Right. That's the thing about it is like even though you might not be close to your dad or your brothers anymore, like the memory is always there. And I'm gonna have to say Toy Story. Toy Story is one of my favorite. Like it's got to be my favorite movie ever. And the reason is because I was in rehab, which wasn't a rehab like drug rehab or anything like that. But I'm disabled. Don't know if y'all knew that, but I had to do physical therapy, job skills, etc., for about a year. And my headmaster, whatever you call her, she was called the supervisor, but she acted like a freaking dictator. But me and supervisor lady didn't get along at all. So by the end of the day, I was always pissed off.
Right.
And so the only thing I knew was, I'm going to watch Toy Story because it always makes me smile and calms me down when I'm angry. So that's my answer. To this day, I can't watch Toy Story without getting anxiety. I don't know why. I do know why, but that's a long story. Nobody gives a shit about. So.
I don't know if it's a certain movie. I think it's just the people that I'm with while I'm watching.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're at 53, so we're gonna go up to an even hour. I know I keep extending the time, but what?
All right, one last question.
Okay. Noah, you want to ask this one?
Sure.
No, let's let Simon ask one actually. Simon's probably more. Okay, Simon, what you got, dude?
Let's see. We talked about first game and game to go to, movie.
Yeah, I talked about everything childhood related, didn't I?
Yeah, pretty much. So like a while ago on the forum when I had asked people about best video game movie and worst video game movie, and it's like, if you had complete creative freedom.
Oh my God, I love where this question is going.
Yeah, you already know where I'm going.
Yes.
What movie would you make? And go ahead and give me the lead. Like, who would be your lead actor?
Okay, I have two.
We're talking like you have complete freedom to do whatever you want. There's
right.
No budget restraint or anything.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and answer this one. I would make my movie first of all, but that's unrelated to the question. But that's my answer. That's a good question because a lot of the good series have already been made. I would say, video game related or just in general.
I was thinking video game related, but
That's a good question. I didn't really play a lot of those types of video games.
I mean, hey, they made an Angry Birds.
Well, that was great.
Apparently, anything can be turned into.
That was Angry Birds was great. Don't knock Angry Birds, man. Angry Birds was.
I ain't knocking it. I'm just saying, if I had said to you next big video game movie would Angry Birds have been what popped into your head.
Right. I would say, Portal for sure. Portal for sure.
Yeah, that would actually be really good.
I would say, Christopher Nolan is the director. I mean, aside from the fact that I have creative freedom, Christopher Nolan, I think. Either Christopher Nolan, Ridley Scott, or Steven Spielberg. I think
almost go with Scott,
right,
and then have it be a the thing that would be interesting about that is to see if you could pull off the movie with literally no dialogue in it.
Right. But you could. Here's the way you could do it as an origin story with dialogue in it. But here the direction I would go with that is kind of a Saw type thing where you have to escape or you die. And because the whole game is just you escaping from a laboratory, so you don't really have to deviate from the plot to have a good movie. As far as who I would have as my actors, I really don't know much about movies at all. You would be surprised how little I know. I would say Gladys, I would keep her original voice, but it's also a matter of anybody's voice can be electronically altered. So it depends on if you're gonna stick.
Well, I mean, you might as well.
Right. If you're gonna stick to the type of character that Gladys is, maybe a different actor would be appropriate. I would say I want to say somebody that's threatening, but I can't really think of a threatening female actor. I would say Scarlett Johansson, if anybody. Because, I mean, Scarlett Johansson's not threatening.
Well, but she's going to be in Ghost in the Shell.
So I could fucking Ghost in the Shell.
Have the whole robot thing down.
Right. Who would you pick for Gladys?
I would go with the original voice actor.
Oh, yeah.
And I wouldn't see a reason to change it.
Right. Simon, did we lose you? What happened? He's Noah. No, you're back. You're back. You're back.
I'm not gonna be acting to go with it. I would think you could keep the voice.
Right.
Excuse me.
I would say let's switch the question. If you could either reboot or make a sequel to any franchise, what would it be? You can even reboot an existing reboot,
right?
If you want to.
Okay, so I have an idea for it would.
You're breaking up here, dude. I can't hear you. Hold on. Do what? You're breaking up over here.
Oh. Give me 1 second. I know the reason why. It's because I walked into the other room away from my thing. But here, give me 1 second. Yeah. So it wouldn't be a sequel, or it wouldn't be a reboot so much as a sequel, probably.
Right.
But I think that you could do a version of MacGyver that would be about where you could still have Richard Dean Anderson being it as MacGyver, and it's like the next generation.
Right.
And I wrote down a lot of ideas for it.
Right.
And I think it could work.
Right.
Then again, I'm not a professional.
Expanding on that idea, not necessarily MacGyver, but you said Next Generation. I like the idea of the original sequel to Ghostbusters 2. Not saying that the reboot was shitty, but it was. But expanding on the idea of Peter and Dana having a kid and him being the next generation leader of the Ghostbusters would have been interesting.
I think the problem with the reboot for the Ghostbusters 2 on a large level was that it wasn't really clear if it was going to be a reboot or a sequel.
Right.
I think they should have made it where it was a sequel.
Right.
Since you weren't going to get the original guys to come back anyway.
Right.
At least in any meaningful fashion.
Right. Something with
and then you leave things open for that. You can bring back in characters, and you can't, like, even if that first movie isn't about them, like, that possibility is still there.
Right.
To deal with. But, you know.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions, actually, because we're talking about reboot culture now.
Oh, boy.
I'm sorry.
You don't want to hear my thoughts on reboot.
The baby's going to duck out.
Yep. I have bedtime here.
Noah, we love you, man. Come back and join us next time.
Alright, definitely. Talk to you later.
Okay, so anyway, what do you think about this turned into the longest this turned into the longest discussion. This was only supposed to be like 30 minutes. But no, what do you think of reboot culture as it stands?
I understand why it happened, and there are some positive things that have come out from it.
Right.
I think the problem is, and I'm gonna move and talk both about it in terms of video games and movies.
Exactly.
Because
yeah,
like here's one of the things that kind of gets me about it.
Right.
I see a lot of people say, "Oh, I wish they would remake such and such a game with updated graphics."
Right.
Or you hear that a lot in movies when people are like, "Oh, they need to remake such and such a movie with the new effects that we have now would be better."
Right.
And it's like I get that on one level, but on another level, I kind of feel like that's not gonna change. Like you're not gonna substantially improve.
Right. Certain movies and games, it actually takes away from the appeal rather than add to it.
Right. Like if somebody told me again, to allude to a game that I had mentioned earlier,
right,
in this conversation, Link to the Past. If somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Peter, we're just remaking Link to the Past,"
do you go by Peter or Simon?
I go by both.
Okay, good, because I feel like an asshole if I'd been calling you by the wrong name.
No, I actually do go by both. There's a long story behind my name, which if next time I come back on,
Simon Peter, upon this rock I build my church. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, I figured that.
That's what you would assume, but that's not actually the answer, and that's why I said it does actually kind of turn into a long story.
Oh yeah,
but,
I mean I got time for long stories. I like pissing off my YouTube audience with long videos. So I mean we got time if you want to.
Like I said, it'll give me something to throw out next time I
right.
go on. But anyway, my whole point being though is like I would almost feel like I don't need that. Like
right.
I have Link to the Past.
Right.
I have the cartridge.
Right.
I have the ROM. Like
yeah.
I can play that game anyhow in any way I want. I don't really actually understand why I need it in a different
Exactly.
Why do I need it that way? And that's not me saying that I don't want games to progress.
Right.
But I'm very excited that the new Breath of the Wild
right.
is a
right.
pretty game.
It's gorgeous.
But it's like at the same time, that game was good for when it came out, and it was the attention to detail in it when it came out was marvelous.
Right.
Now, yeah, it's 16-bit, so it's not gonna, it's not gonna look as fancy as a game now, but
Right.
that it almost takes away from it when you change it.
Right, exactly. That's
Like going back on, well, I'm just going to ramble if I go that.
yeah.
But my whole point is, though, I do appreciate at the same time people wanting to revisit things
Right.
and update them, and that makes sense to me as well. I just feel like anymore this mindset of anything that was popular before
Needs to be rebooted.
Sort of popular. I mean, what
Right.
they're going to reboot Big Trouble in Little China?
Right. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I'm like, why would you even like? I don't. To me, I
Right.
don't even find it cross someone's mind to do that.
Right.
But anyway,
Speaking of that, back to what I was saying about how sometimes it takes away from the appeal. I mean, look at Crash Bandicoot right now in its current state. It looks freaking gorgeous, but that's the appeal. Maybe not the appeal to me then, but the appeal to me the appeal to me now is how primitive the graphics were.
mm-hmm.
And like if you're making this with state of the art graphics, that's good and all, but it's just not. It's not the same. It's not the same thing. Like it's not even. It's as if you're making a completely new game out of it.
And what I've wondered, and I haven't thought about this enough to have a fully fleshed out
Right.
view on it yet. So who's ever listening to this should just take it as me throwing
Right.
something in.
Nobody's still gonna be watching this by this point.
But when like when you think of older games, I was having a conversation with Ian, who's on the group as well.
Ian.
Pringle.
Yeah.
He and I go to church together.
Makes me hungry every time I see his name.
Yeah, he does. He has very good name. He actually kind of looks like the Pringles packet guy.
He's probably going to see this.
At any event, he and I were talking. I was like, people overlook how important mechanics are
Right.
to how a video game works.
Right.
And the graphics are incorporated like into that.
Right.
And so I think when sometimes people are like, oh, just polish up the graphics and kick it out, and you forget the limitations of the hardware.
Right. Right. Exactly.
How that game works.
Exactly. Okay, I came up with another answer to the last question about video game movies.
Oh, sure.
I want them to get the hell finished with the next Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I almost, when you started talking about rebooting franchises, I almost said I would reboot the Mortal Kombat movies.
Have you seen the Mortal Kombat fan film?
Yes, I have.
I cannot believe that's not a real thing. Like literally, like I told my friend, I was like, cause are you talking about the same one, like the one with the reptile and stuff like that?
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. I mean, that's like current movie. That's like current technology level stuff. If they were to take it in that direction, I like that direction, but I dislike certain aspects of it.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm not saying I would do it exactly how anybody I've seen do it, but I don't know. I was watching a vlog the other day, and the guy made a good point. He's like, we actually haven't had a good just like martial arts style like tournament movie in a while.
Right.
Where the classic '80s trope of like Enter the Dragon or
right.
The Karate Kid, where it's like you had a battle, you had some time, you had a battle, and it was like these one-on-one,
right,
highly executed fights.
Ooh, it reminded me of something that I was thinking of, but go ahead and finish your thought.
Well, I was just going to say, and I think Mortal Kombat would fit the bill big time.
Exactly.
And it has enough of a mythos that you can, like, build a story on it.
Right. But back to what I was saying, you were kind of talking about a tournament type thing. I came up with a movie concept that inadvertently turned out being Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. Which, it was, but it wasn't. It's a really cool concept, and I might play with it sometime in the future. but basically it was kind of a. It was difficult for me to write from the perspective of a Christian because I kind of had played around with the character of God a little bit, and because the story was set in Boston, because Massachusetts was there are 2 or 3 really good stories, literary works that are set in Massachusetts. The Crucible is the only one I can think of, but I'm sure there was the Crucible and the Scarlet Letter, I think, maybe.
Yeah, well, and Moby Dick starts there.
Right. And so the idea that I had was it was a religious town that was going through simultaneous drought and famine. Well, it was more of a famine because they still had the cows that were producing the milk. But anyway, they were going through a famine, so the crops were failing. And it starts with a vision from God, or how it's stereotypical, almost kind of biblical. Hey, this is the Lord. You're gonna do this to if you want to solve your problems, you got to do this. Basically, God tells them to sacrifice all their life, or sacrifice at least one head of livestock. Which at that point, everybody just flips their shit. Because livestock is so important to them at this time, because that's all they have, and so they consult. I guess the mayor of the town or the leader of the group, and he's just well, it says in the Bible that God's ways are better than our own, so everybody does it, even if it's with an angry heart, they still do it, Except for there's this one guy, the atheist or the pagan, I guess, would be more appropriate for that time. Sacrifices a pig out of spite. And everybody knows that biblically the pig was the most, Old Testament times at least, the pig was the most unclean animal of all that could literally not be sacrificed. And so what happens is God places a curse on the town just because of that one guy, and the cows metaphorically they dry out, and they're not able to produce milk anymore, so they end up dying. And so they go on this magical quest in hell. A magical quest in hell. That sounds like a good name, but no. They go on this quest in hell to regain God's favor. It's kind of God is privately speaking to the person. He says, "Hey, if my favor is to be regained, I want you to go kill all these demons." Right? And so it's kind of like Scott Pilgrim versus the World. In a way, because if you want to get the girl, you have to get rid of all 7 of my exes. But it's more of, it's a spiritual journey. Well, it's not a spiritual journey because all it is killing demons and stuff. But it ended up being Satan manipulating the other guy into killing demons. That's why I say it ended up being Shaolin Monks by mistake, because have you played Shaolin Monks?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically the same plot, which completely took me by surprise when I played it, by the way. It was excellent. I just couldn't get past freaking Shao Kahn. I got past the other 2. What did you think of that game? Considering that even for the Mortal Kombat franchise at that time, it was a bit of a departure.
Yeah, I think I kind of have the same view of it as with the Conquest mode that they then put in Deception,
right?
Which I think came out shortly thereafter.
Exactly. That's
and it's okay, in theory, the concept is really good. The Deception storyline was just stupid, and playing as Shichinko was stupid. I'm sorry if anybody out there disagrees.
Right. No, like I said, no. We're already past the hour and a half mark, so nobody in the world is gonna be.
I'm just saying that game should have been a lot better than.
Right.
I kind of feel the same way about Shaolin Monks. It's like this game should have been better because it's like I've always said I want NetherRealms to do an actual RPG.
Right.
And like I do like it.
Right.
But I don't know. The game didn't really do it for me.
Are you tired yet? Are you tired? Are you bored with talking yet?
I'm not bored with talking, but I'll probably need to go like within the next 10 or so minutes because I do have to get ready for tomorrow. We have a big board meeting. So. Yeah.
So if you're still listening, we love you with all of our collective hearts.
All two of our collective.
All two of our well, Christians are all one, so we love you with one heart, I guess. I don't know, but this has been Gaming Shenanigans or Gamer Shenanigans, whatever the hell it's called. I don't even know by this point. This has been an hour and a half of rambling. Thank you for listening. We'll be back. We'll be back next month, hopefully. Thanks, guys. Bye. Well.